What's up, YouTube? My name is Arthur Robinson Jr. I am the creator and host of PowerfulInterviews.com. I am a partner of NationalDiversified.com. I want to welcome each and every one of you to this phenomenal video. In this interview, you're going to experience life-changing information that you will not find anywhere else. I have secured an incredible interview with a great friend of mine, successful businessman. He is a hectomillionaire. His name is Verne Harnish. Verne Harnish is the founder and CEO of Gazelles company, and he is an educator, and he educates entrepreneurs all over the world on how they can scale their business. Verne Harnish is the best-selling author of his phenomenal book, which is called Scaling Up. In this interview, you're going to hear exclusively how Verne Harnish, he breaks down layman's terms about 80% of life is about showing up. Also in this interview, Verne Harnish, he breaks down layman's terms about entrepreneurs and business leaders must surround themselves around successful people and much, much more. So remember, this is not BS information. The right information will change your current situation. Wealthy people, they take advice from other wealthy people, and unfortunately, broke people, they take advice from broke people. So right about now, go get your pen and your pad, sit back and relax, and write down some notes in this interview that I'm going to reveal to each and every one of you with my great friend, successful businessman. His name is Verne Harnish. This interview, it will change your life. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn your notifications on. That way you be well informed when I publish more successful audio interviews. So, check it out. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the one, the only, the powerful Verne Harnish to the show.
Arthur, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and look forward to sharing hopefully some practical ideas that your audience can use to scale.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Verne, for taking time out of your busy schedule to educate me and the listeners worldwide about your phenomenal book, Scaling Up, and about building wealth. I gladly appreciate it.
You bet.
To everyone that's listening, I highly recommend go and get your pen and your pad right now. My great friend Verne Harnish is going to break down layman's terms about building wealth, and we're going to talk about his phenomenal book, Scaling Up. Is that correct, Verne?
We are, Arthur. Thank you.
Now, what I'd like to know, and can you explain to the listeners in layman's terms, who is the phenomenal Verne Harnish? How long you been in your powerful industry, and what is your expertise?
Well, you know, it's a fun year. This is my 35th year of helping entrepreneurs scale. It's the 30th anniversary of EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization that you mentioned and I founded. It's the 25th anniversary of the first graduating class of that executive program we're still running and held at MIT. And it's the 20th anniversary of my company, Gazelles. And so been at it a while, really have only done one thing in my career. And today we've touched about 40,000 pretty significant companies around the globe and using these tools to scale up. And I think what's interesting is Arthur, there's 11,000 startups every hour in the world. So we're not really hurting for folks getting companies going. The challenge is way too few of those scale. You know, we know the sad statistics about how many of those startups fail within 5 years. And so that's what we address. And, you know, most of the colleges and universities have got entrepreneurship programs that, again, teach how to start. And their MBA programs teach how to run, big corporations. But there's really a dearth of education, practical education about what you've got to do to kind of handle the chaos that comes when you get your first employees and then you have 50 and then you have 500. And, how do you put the systems in place and the disciplines in place so that this doesn't crush you? And that's why I think 76% of companies in the U.S. only have themselves as the employee. And it's hard to scale if you're not able to kind of get kind of fundamental practices in place so you can keep these human beings organized to help you.
Wow. Now, before you scale your business, Is it good for entrepreneurs and business owners to focus on generating revenue? And would you say that sales is the avenue to more revenue?
You're absolutely right, Arthur. The big mistake entrepreneurs make, and my wife right now has launched a new olive oil business. She's bringing the literally most award-winning, best-tasting olive oil from Europe to the United States.
Wow.
And what's critical is you can get caught up in building the website and getting business cards and working through all of the details and never make any sales. And the key thing is, until you hit that first million, you just have to sell like hell. And it's hand-to-hand combat, and it's about getting up every day and sending some emails and making some phone calls and placing some Facebook ads. She's running those, and they're getting her a really nice return. But the key is she's been generating revenue from almost day one, and that's key. And specifically, the number one weakness, functional weakness in companies that fail to scale is marketing, in a sense, separate from sales. How do you round up new relationships, whether it's customers, employees, investors, or most importantly, attention? There's key bloggers and YouTubers that if you can get them behind, and influencers in your marketplace, if you can get them behind what it is that you're doing, they're really going to multiply your efforts. So if it's okay, let me tell you a story, and I think it underpins the first thing that entrepreneurs need to do. Is that all right?
Yes.
So when I launched EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, at the time it was the Young Entrepreneurs Organization, I had read that Steve Jobs had this marketing coach consultant, a guy named Regis McKenna. And Regis, by the way, famous in Silicon Valley for not only helping Steve, but Intel and Genentech and all these other Silicon Valley great companies. And so I'm sitting as a student, at Wichita State University in the middle of the country, go Shockers. And I'm thinking, look, if Regis is good enough for Steve, who's running a $2 billion company at the time, I'm going to call it. So, you're young and dumb and bold. And so I called Regis, and I had a good elevator pitch. I wanted to build the world's largest entrepreneurship organization for people like Steve. And he decided to take me on as a free client, as only, he says, he ever had in the history of the firm. He said, all right, I'm going to put you through the same process I'm putting Steve and everyone else. So he assigned a young guy to me, Rich Moran, who today, serial entrepreneur, VC, and now president of a university in Silicon Valley. Rich said, all right, step number one, you have to have a marketing meeting, even if it's just with yourself. You've got to set aside 1 hour a week where you're going to focus on marketing activities. I said, all right, I can do that. And the way we're going to do is we're going to have a 1 hour phone call. And so every week I called in. I still have that 1 hour marketing meeting today, 34 years later. And then he said, step number two. And Bill Gates considered this, Arthur, the single best question he'd ever been asked. And it was a question that Regis asked Steve Jobs and Rich Moran asked me. And that is, take a piece of paper out. Who are the top 25 influencers, key relationships that you need to bolt on to this idea, to this business, in order to really help it scale rapidly? And they said, look, the bigger the names, the faster you're going to scale. So my wife has made that list, and she's working it. She was just out at the International Culinary Institute doing the first half of her sommelier course and meeting the right chefs and experts and judges and other stuff in her industry. And by the way, she did do well, came in second as a brand new olive oil at the big olive oil show in New York City.
Wow. And
I did the same. So I took a piece of paper out, and I said, all right, I didn't know any better. I wrote down President Ronald Reagan. But now, look, I'm a student at Wichita State University. But I'm like, if I can get the President of the United States, this is back in 1983, to sign on and start talking about the importance of entrepreneurship, he'll be the first president in the United States to do that. And I did. And in fact, George Bush and Dan Quayle then invited me in as one of 10 to advise them when he then got elected on their entrepreneurship policy. I wrote down, obviously, I want Steve Jobs involved. And sure enough, 36 months later, I threw the big event, his first public speech after being fired from Apple. I wanted Michael Dell, and I had Michael Dell then at that event. I wanted Inc. Magazine and Venture Magazine to give us coverage. I didn't know who the owners were, but we took an hour each week, and we figured out. And I found that Arthur Lipper, who owned Venture, still a dear friend of mine today, 34 years later, was speaking down in Dallas. So I get in my Pontiac, and I drive the 6 hours down there, and I hear his speech, and I sit in front and dress nice and nod my head a lot. And I walked up to him afterwards, gave him my elevator pitch, and got him. He ended up giving us full-page ads.
Wow.
In his magazine. And Arthur, by making a list and working it systematically, again, just a kid, Wichita State University, our organization had scaled globally within 36 months. Now, let's say you just have a local restaurant. Now, who are the opinion leaders? Who are the influencers? Who's the right politician that if they're seen at your restaurant? Who's the critic that's going to write it up? Again, my daughter has got a little natural body butter business, and she absolutely knows the 5 YouTubers that she needs to get behind her product at 14 in order to begin to really scale it now that we've moved back here to the United States from Europe just a few weeks ago. And so step number 1, take a piece of paper out and write down the 25 people locally or globally that if you can kind of get to behind what you're doing is really going to help you scale rapidly. And that was the first and most important thing in marketing.
Wow. Now, you mentioned the business icon Steve Jobs. And I know Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, they basically changed the world by building the Apple brand. And before he passed away, he actually scaled within a 5-year period where he had $119 billion in the bank cash because basically he was liquid, but him and his partner, Steve Wozniak, they basically changed the whole world by dominating the cell phone industry. And before the iPhone came out, actually BlackBerry was actually dominating. And before the BlackBerry, it was called the Palm Pilot.
Correct.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
Now,
well, and there's some lessons there. I think first, even though, they got fairly big early on, the reality is Apple didn't truly scale to what we see today until its 25th anniversary. They started in 1976, had a good run early and then faltered, and then Steve came back, and it was in 2001, 25 years later, that he released the iPod. And Apple was in dire straits. I mean, they were near failure, and the rest is history. Same with Starbucks. Starbucks started in 1971. They only had 100 stores. Not that that isn't small, but, isn't that small. But they only had 100 stores on their 20th anniversary. They had not even gotten international until their 25th. And their real inflection point occurred at their 25th anniversary. So I always love that quote. They said, I'm always amazed how overnight successes take a hell of a long time. And so a big part of it is you just got to hang in there long enough until you finally get the flywheel moving, as Jim Collins talks about, and get momentum. And a lot of times you're too early with your idea, and you just got to hang around long enough until what you do is hot. We got a client that's in the, I'm going to pronounce right, but kombucha business. That's that kind of fermented food that's really good for your digestive system, and they've created a drink. And it's all of a sudden, everyone is health conscious. All of a sudden those products are hot, and they're growing at 20% a month.
Wow.
So, the market can make you look smart or make you look stupid. The other thing that Steve got right, and this is where entrepreneurs mess up, is they need to provide the 100% solution. Honestly, the iPod would have been nothing if Steve had not gotten iTunes, a service, launched. And today the App Store, that's really what has crushed all their hardware competition is really the software and services, and the fact that they've got, millions of people building apps for their phone that makes it much more useful. So back with my wife, she's got her olive oil, and last night literally we were out at dinner, and she's thinking, hey, why don't I create an entire kind of kit, the 100% solution that allows a restaurant to offer kind of a fun, 3 olive oil tasting sampling is part of their offering. Now that olive oil, people are recognizing the heart of the Mediterranean diet, how important it is, and now restaurants can pick up on that. And she can take her olive oil Veritat and present it then with maybe 2 others that she partners with, and really give people a nice experience with great olive oils and their breads and the right salts. But if she can bring in the whole package, so it's, the restaurant can just launch it versus having to pull all the parts and pieces together, that's going to make it much better. So laser focus. Steve said we're just going to do one thing every 2 years. iPod was first, and then provide this 100% solution for the customer to make it easy are the 2 things entrepreneurs have to focus on. And that's our lessons from Steve Jobs.
Wow. Now, you said that the market can make you look smart. Can you explain to the listeners, Verne, what is your definition of marketing, and what does marketing mean to you?
Well, again, there's the market versus marketing. The market is what's happening. It's the trends, what's hot, what's not, and you want to find the waves and ride them. Right now, if you're in the marijuana business, you're going to make $1 billion, if you do it right. And I've got a dear friend that's just sold his tech company, and he's taken part of the winnings from that and building up a significant marijuana business in Michigan, which is now getting ready to, legalize it for medical, and then they're going to probably be doing it for recreational, just like Colorado has. And those companies are just riding a significant wave if you can pull the capital together to play in that business. So that's the market. Now, marketing, there's nothing more fundamental than the 4 Ps. You got to figure out what is the right product. And my buddy Bob is really, he was at my CEO boot camp last week, and he's really thinking through the specific product offerings he thinks are going to be right. He doesn't think he wants to get into the leaf part. He thinks the oils and the vapors are really the right piece of that market to go after. You got to figure out, obviously, the pricing. And I got to tell you, most entrepreneurs screw that up. It's just a wild-ass guess. And we have a tendency to underprice to get into business, and then we forget to quit doing that and leave a lot of money on the table. Then you got to figure out place, how are you going to promote it? Again, my wife is really laser focused in direct to consumer via Facebook, and then you got to figure out how you're going to promote it. And she's just finishing up today a newsletter that is going to go out because, as you know, the customer would rather be educated than sold. And so my buddy in the marijuana business has launched a magazine in the space in Michigan as a way for him to kind of control the ink in the industry and control the conversation, not control it, but, contribute to the conversation and the education of the consumers and the leadership of the state so they can continue to move this industry forward. And so product, price, place, and promotion have always been the 4 fundamental P's of marketing. Now, Ogilvy, the big global ad agency, has updated it to the 4 E's of marketing. E as in Edward. And I encourage people, your listeners to Google Ogilvy 4 E's of marketing, and there's like a white paper and a PowerPoint. And so, for instance, it's not just about the product, it's the entire experience. What are people's experience with my wife's website, and, when they receive the oil, how easy is it, in terms of pouring and using it. Steve Jobs understood that it wasn't just the iPod. He cared about as much about the packaging. The packaging is a great experience. And then at some point he got frustrated with, people who were retailing his devices didn't do it well. And so part of his 100% solution was launch his own retail stores so he could control the buying experience and improve it. So it's every touch point you've got with the consumer, from them enjoying your Facebook ad to getting to your website to making it easy to order, making the offerings simple enough that people can make decisions to, when they receive it, that the product is in good shape and easy to use. And so you've got to look at that whole experience. So go get Ogilvy's 4 E's, and between that and working your list of 25 key relationships, you got enough to do every week in what we call marketing.
So would you say that marketing done right is the quickest path to the sale?
It is, yeah. It is. And scaling up, we're very clear. It is the number one critical function if you want to scale.
Now, a couple of weeks back, I had Naveen Jain on my show, and he's very, very focused on changing the healthcare industry. And he's basically shaking up the world by being very focused about his phenomenal brand, which is called Moon Express. Can you explain to the listeners, Verne, what do billionaires and hecto-millionaires do on a consistent, regular basis that unfortunately broke entrepreneurs just don't do?
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting. As just before this interview, I was wrapping up my kind of interview questions. I'll be on our Fortune. Yeah, I write for Fortune magazine. I'm their venture columnist. So at our Fortune Scale-Up Summit next week, we're hosting, among other things, multi-billionaire Sam Zell, the big real estate and entrepreneur out of Chicago. And by the way, his book I consider one of the top 2 business biographies of 2017. His book's titled Am I Too Subtle? And I encourage every entrepreneur to read Sam Zell's, Z-E-L-L, biography this year. Anyway, in going through that book, there's really 2 things that are clear. Number one, the way they see around corners, because you just have to be minutes, not months ahead of your competition and doing a deal or getting to the marketplace, is they spend a lot of time with a lot of people, talking to folks, traveling to go see them, as opposed to kind of, sit in their office and meditate. Everyone thought that's what Steve Jobs did, but Steve was famous for inviting tons of people over to his home, and he'd do these famous walks and talks, and he would pick their brains, and it would be people off his list of 25. So the first thing is and I recommend people get Keith Ferrazzi's book, Never Eat Alone. And you don't even have to necessarily read it. Just put it on your desk and remind you that your number one job is to identify and go out and spend time with your customers, talking to them. That's part of that whole lean startup that Eric Ries teaches. And that's what Sam Zell did. Sam, just this last week, got back. He was down, met with the president of Argentina. He was with the royal family in Abu Dhabi. He is out gathering firsthand information, boots on the ground, intel about what's going on so that he can pick up the trends directly. So get off your butt, get out of your office, and get out and have breakfast, coffees, lunches, and find out what's going on. It's that whole idea, 80% of life is showing up. And my wife, at last minute, is like, I don't really want to go out to California and go through this course. But she got out there and met an amazing group of people. They're going to really help her scale up the business. And so that's the one thing billionaires do. And then number 2, they're unbelievably disciplined. They have their routines, and they stick to them. And they're pretty common. They go all the way back to John D. Rockefeller, the namesake of my book, The Wealthiest Human Being Ever on the Planet, except maybe, next to Vladimir Putin. That's a joke, but probably not funny. And they have these fundamental routines of what they do when they get up. There was just, in fact, Wall Street Journal did a great interview with Bill Gates and his CEO, Satya Nadella. And they asked him, the questions, hey, what's your day look like? And it's very routinized, like Steve Jobs. Steve got up, first of all, put on the exact same clothing, so he didn't have to think about what he was going to wear that day and not waste any brain cells. He had lunch every day with Jonathan Ive, just, his his head designer and design team, just like John D. Rockefeller had lunch every day with his directors. So it's that kind of routine and discipline, along with just being out and immersed in the marketplace, is that what the billionaires do.
So you have to take massive action in order for your business to happen.
Yeah, because it's easy to get frozen, and you just sit there and you don't know what to do. And part of it is just do something. And if you've got a default, you got to say, all right now at this moment, what's most in my way? I got to get this newsletter edited. And then what you got to do is have the discipline to say, all right, I'm going to carve out 90 minutes, and I'm just going to sit down and push through the pain. And really, if you can do one significant thing every day to move your business forward, you can really, my wife, we have children as well and all this other stuff. She really is trying to live truly the Tim Ferriss idea before our work week. If she can put in a really good solid hour every day and get the most significant thing done right and then outsource everything else, she's going to be able to move the business forward.
Wow. Verne, can you explain to the audience in your own influential way, what is the best advice that you have ever received?
Well, that was, it goes back to my opening kind of idea, and that was Andrew Carnegie, who, was poor himself, and so he realized he needed to kind of hang around the right people. And so, we were wealthy when I was young. My dad had a very successful company, and then he and his partners lost it in the 73 recession. And he ended up broke, and in 73 moved out to western Kansas, a little town called Kinsley, this side of Dodge, literally 35 miles this side of Dodge City, Kansas. And I really thought I'd died and gone to hell. But, hey, you make the best of it. It really was a great experience. Then ended up at Wichita State. And I knew I needed to take his advice. And so I ended up getting recruited to join this company in Wichita as a freshman because I needed to work, to pay for college. We didn't have any money back then, and I didn't want to pile up on debt. And like almost the first day, I'd heard that the chairman of the company, he and his wife lived in a beautiful mansion in the right neighborhood in Wichita. And I just boldly went up to Don and said, Don, hey, I'm your new employee. Your guy Verne hired me. I'm Verne, and his name was Verne as well. And I said, do you suppose I could live with you and your wife? And he looked at me, but he's like, well, let me go ask her. And come to find out, they'd go to Florida every September through May, which was the school year. And they actually thought it would be good to actually have somebody staying at their place while they were out for 9 months. And so I ended up having this beautiful place that I got to live in essentially free. He felt he ought to charge me something, so it's $50 a month. And more importantly, Don took me under his wing, and he introduced me to the power in Wichita. I got to know the founders of Pizza Hut, Frank and Dan Carney. I got to know Jack DeBoer, who I was just communicating with a few days ago, who founded Residence Inn and all these other amazing hotel concepts that he sold to the big players.
Wow.
I got to know George Obla. In fact, when I launched then ACE, which became YEO, I'd hitch rides on George Obla's Learjet to go to the East Coast, and I'd hitch rides on Jack DeBoer's G2 to go to the West Coast. I got to know all these very powerful people through Don and his son, who was a YPOer, Jack Simpson. And so that's, to me, the most important advice is get yourself surrounded by people who are successful, and they're going to draw you to that success.
Wow.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
Let's talk about the word entrepreneur. Now, the word entrepreneur means entreprendre, and it is a Latin word, and it was invented in the 15th century in France. And a gentleman by the name of John Baptist, he invented the word, and over 300 years later, that word still exists, which is entrepreneur. So entre means between, and ponder means to take. So it means to take lower productivity and increase it to higher productivity. Can you explain to the listeners, Verne, how are you increasing your productivity in your businesses?
Yeah, you're exactly accurate, Arthur. And, the joke is that an entrepreneur would, another definition of an entrepreneur is somebody who would rather work 80 hours a week for themselves than 40 hours for someone else. And the problem is, at some point, that quits being a joke. That this thing that you created that was supposed to give you all this financial and life freedom starts to feel like this ball and chain that's around your legs and neck, kind of weighing you down. And that's why a lot of entrepreneurs at some point just throw in the towel and say, you know what, I can make a lot more money and work less just getting a job again. And so that's what we focus on, is how do we that's what Scaling Up's about in my original book, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. What are these fundamental routines and tools that help reduce significantly the time it takes for you to grow a business? And so really to answer that, I just encourage people to grab a copy of Scaling Up and begin to plow through it.
Verne, let's have a conversation about money. Now, I know money is not value. Money is just a facilitator to do transactions. Can you explain to the audience, how would you define money?
Yeah, and Arthur, it was Lynn Twist who wrote a book called The Soul of Money that really helped me sort this out. And I'm glad you're asking the question, because honestly, most people don't get what money's about and what it represents. And for a simple analogy, money is like water. And you know that if you let water sit around, it goes bad. It'll kill you. The very thing that provides us life force can be deadly if it goes stale. And so what you've got to do is you got to keep it flowing. That's the only way water stays healthy. Even these big water tanks, there's a little device that's been invented that keeps the water moving, and they can reduce by 90% the chemicals they have to dump in there to keep the water from going bad. And so that's money. You got to keep it flowing. And I tie that then into Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I had grown my company from $500,000 to $1 million to $2 million to $4 million, get ready to do $8 million, and then boom, 9/11 hit. And we do these events, and all of a sudden people couldn't fly. Nobody wanted to fly for like 2 months, and I lost like $1 million.
Wow.
In 10 weeks, and I was upside down that quick. I mean, you can get by with decent people, strategy, and execution, but not a day without cash, and I was out. And I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? And we were just in EO hosting Robert Kiyosaki to come in and speak to our DC chapter. And I thought, all right, I better read his book, which I thought was really just kind of a get-rich-quick book, so I dismissed it. But I thought I courtesy ought to read it, and I was impressed. And at the end, he talks about how his rich dad, and there's been a lot of debate about who that is and if it really exists. But it doesn't matter. The point is still valid, which is whenever the wealthy get in trouble, they know they've got to prime the pump. And you've got to give. Seriously, you've got to give before you're going to receive. You got to give value. Like even these 25 on the list, you got to give them value first before you're going to ask for anything in return. That's one of the little side keys to making this thing work. I had to figure out, all right, what value do I offer to the president? What value do I offer really to Arthur Lipper, Adventure Magazine? How do I give first? If nothing else, my attention and my appreciation before I ask to receive anything. And Adam Grant's famous book, Give and Take, has got to be a must-read of every entrepreneur. And so our church was having a big, massive capital campaign. Here we're talking about September 2001, right after 9/11. And, we'd always give a little bit of money in the till, but nothing to write home about. And so I talked to my wife, and we committed what to us was an insane pledge over the next 3 years and said, let's just trust that the universe helps us work this out. And I know hope's not a strategy, but this is more than a hope. This was a true giving, and then get my head back in to running the business. And sure enough, the law of 10X, what we ended up, contributing that first year, 2002, I took 10 times that to the bottom line of the business. So not only did I turn it around, not only was I able to pay back my investors, but I took 10X that amount to the bottom line. And my only disappointment is I should have donated more. And the key is you've got to do it when you least can afford it into the marketplace. So that's what I've learned about money. It's like water, and you've got to keep it flowing, and you often have to prime the pump. You got to spend some to make some.
Wow.
That's why entrepreneurs, keep your day job. Entrepreneurs, get partners. And two of you, keep your day job and let the third one go full time until you can then all transition. There's a lot of strategies there, but we know that co-founders scale faster than single. You mentioned it, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, Bill Gates and, his partner. The great the Google boys, the really great companies have been partnerships. That way you can kind of divvy up the tasks early on. I think that's why Mark Zuckerberg was smart to get Sheryl Sandberg on sooner than later, and he got a lot of help from Parker early on, who even helped him get the name of the company right, Sean Parker. So you've got to get help early on, and you're going to have to spend some to make some.
So money is a byproduct of the value that you uncover?
It's a symbol that you're delivering value.
Wow.
But you've got to deliver value first before you can expect to get money in return. And that's the key. Folks want to go out and get the money first and then figure out how to deliver value. It's why we really discourage people from raising funds from friends, families, and fools. It just puts undue pressure. You're better off to try to bootstrap it and figure it out yourself.
Verne, I appreciate you coming on my show today, because the whole premise of my show is to educate entrepreneurs and business leaders on an international scale that they can live the life that they truly desire, but they have to be open to these important principles. So I don't like what I see what's on the news, so I create my own news. I
love that, Arthur. Yeah, in fact, the entrepreneurs I love, we have a rule. We just don't read the news. It's just a downer, and we don't need that. And it's biased anyway. Only if it bleeds does it lead, is our rule in the media. And so it's our job to sensationalize it, and none of us need that negative stuff flowing through our heads.
Verne, I wrote down some powerful words, 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest, so you can rate them in your own influential way. Are you ready?
Tell me what I'm supposed to do again. Give it a 1 to 5 rating, how important this word is?
Yes, 5 the highest and 1 the lowest.
To helping a company scale. I'm going to frame it that way. Is that all right?
Accountability.
5.
Perseverance.
5.
Leverage.
6. 10.
Building great relationships.
Yeah, 5 for sure.
Key performance indicators.
5, but you got to make sure it's key. A lot of us, it's like Moneyball. People measure a lot of stuff that doesn't matter.
Speed of implementation.
I'm going to give that a 3 for some other reasons, but not as high as the others.
Health.
5. Steve, you'd had another, year or two, if not decades. Wealth, I'm going to put 0. That's the least important reason to do any of this. It'll come if you're delivering value.
Value.
Yeah, a 5.
Family.
A 10.
Success.
0. It's an outcome. It's not a thing you focus on.
Integrity.
Yeah, a 5.
Branding.
10. Gives you so much power to price and everything else.
Marketing.
A 5.
EBITDA.
You watch Amazon, you think it's a 0, but for the rest of us, it's pretty critical. Problem is we all have what's called EBOT, earnings before owner theft. And, so a lot of us, entrepreneurs have clever ways of getting a lot of stuff covered.
Sales.
A 5.
Revenue.
A 5.
Follow-up.
A 10.
All right, that was good. That was real good.
Well, that was fun, Arthur. I didn't anyone do that before. That's pretty clever.
Verne, can you explain to the audience exactly where they can find you?
The easiest is just remember the name of the book, Scaling Up. So you can go to scalingup.com, and there's all kinds of free chapter you can download, all of our tools are open source, so they're there for folks to use. There's a bunch of articles that they can reference. So there's just all kinds of useful stuff there. And then obviously they can find me through there as well. And I hope they sign up for my weekly insights. Just wrote it today, yesterday, every Thursday. I kind of put out what I hope for some practical ideas like this, and it's free. Mm-hmm. And so they're at scalingup.com. They can sign up for my insights.
Verne, let's talk about the power of using video. Now, I know a couple of years back, Google bought YouTube for $1.6 billion, so video is hot right now. Can you explain to the audience the power of using video? And should entrepreneurs and business leaders use video to expand their brand?
Of course, yeah. For the reason you just described, and video tends to pop you much higher on the search engines than just the written word. And in fact, that's what I've got running right now is a whole series of videos that run it on Facebook and LinkedIn and other places around our scaling up methodologies. And so, just do it.
Well, I know YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, basically email marketing, they're all delivery systems. And I let my driving time become my learning time.
For sure. And that is the number one barrier to scaling is not learning fast enough. You've got to outlearn your competition and your customers. And that's why in my second book, I highlighted Bill Gates' Think Week, that critical routine of taking a couple of weeks each year and immersing himself. His record was 112 books, manuscripts, PhD thesis, white papers, and still today he plows through 50 books a year. Mark Zuckerberg, about half of that. Mark Cuban reads 3 hours every day, which he's done since age 20. And Warren Buffett, 500 pages a day. And when his partner, Charlie Munger, was asked, hey, what's the key to Warren's success? He's outperformed the market for 50 years. Anniversary a year ago, Charlie didn't hesitate. It was to say it's Warren's number one priority to set aside much time for reading and thinking, no matter how old he's gotten. And so it's being a voracious learner. Now, you can listen, you can read, you can go talk to people, but you've got to be a sponge if you want to win out there.
Wow. You say you have to be a sponge, and that is extremely important if you want to be successful. So once people like you, respect you, and trust you, that's when their minds are made up and they want to invest in you because you are your brand?
Yeah, you're obviously part of your brand. Now, obviously, you also want to build a company that becomes independent of you. That's how you really create wealth. And it's somewhat of a challenge for Howard Schultz at Starbucks. He's tried to bring in several leaders. Yeah, I think he finally has got the right one this time, so he can kind of free up his own time.
Wow.
But I think Starbucks' brand is way beyond now Howard's. And look, I bet against him. I would have sworn that Apple would have collapsed when Steve Jobs left, and I don't think I was alone in that. Yet, the company's market cap has over doubled in the 6 years since he unfortunately passed away. And so they were very successful in getting that brand to be something beyond just Steve.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
Verne, explain to the listeners, what was the most important day of your life when you experienced financial freedom?
It was right after the failure that my wife came to me and said, look, hey, honey, I love you, but this entrepreneurial roller coaster that we're on is driving me nuts, and we need to take a chunk. We need to pay ourselves first, and we need to set aside, because the one thing entrepreneurs don't do is save up for retirement, and everything is stuck in the business. And so we created the Truly Fund, and it really was a great discipline to say, let's not live beyond our means. Let's live on about half what I'm making. So we always, bought used cars. Even today, we just, they're too nice cars this time around when we moved back to the U.S. But they're still, we're used cars, half of what they would have cost new. It's rich dad, poor dad. You've got to keep if you want to get out of the rat race, you've got to keep, I think it was 2001. I failed. Kiyosaki comes in, and he's like, you want out of the rat race, you got to keep your living expenses low, and you've got to create passive income streams that fund your living expenses so that you're truly free. And I was able to do that then in 2002, and that was the turnaround.
So passive income is like accumulating mailbox money.
Yes. So the royalties that stream off my books, I'm making money in my sleep, to the online courses that we're selling through, again, our promotions in Facebook and LinkedIn and all that, to the rental properties that we have that are able to kind of take wealth and monetize it and create revenue streams. Those are all things that Kiyosaki talks about, and I, in my EO forum, took it serious.
Now, you wrote 3 phenomenal books: Scaling Up, The Greatest Business Decisions of All Time, and Mastering the Rockefellers. Would you say that your books is your business card, and what would you say that inspired you to write your 3 phenomenal books?
Well, first, I wish Arthur had done it sooner. You're exactly right. It is your calling card. I encourage every entrepreneur to write a book. They're inexpensive now to get done. You can find folks to help you write it, and you can self-publish easily. And there's nothing more powerful than to explain. And all you do is, your chapters are 1 chapter per core value, your purpose, your 3 brand promises, and, where you're going to be taking the business. And there's about 10 chapters right there, and you write, if there's 4 or 5 pages on each, and you got a 50 or 60-page book, that's sufficient enough to print up and hand out, and you can get 5,000 of those printed for $1 a piece, and it absolutely makes you the expert at the industry. You'll all of a sudden be the one asked to do lead breakout sessions at your industry trade shows. And, you'll get, you start by, doing a gig in front of Rotary and, local biz groups, and get the newspaper to do a story on you because you've got a book. And so controlling the ink, both book and then starting to support it with videos is important.
You said when you wrote your phenomenal books, you wrote 3 brand promises. So your brand is your promise?
It is. And the father of influence, Robert Cialdini, has been clear on it. His book Influence has got to be another must read. That if you want to convince someone to buy your product or service, you make them 3 promises. You say, here's the 3 reasons. And that works better than 4 or 2 and much better than a list of 10. So Southwest Airlines really was first low fare. There's always one you lead with. They were always the low fare airline. They were always known for having lots of fun, and they had lots of flights. They actually called them the 3 LFs. And that has powered that company now for 45 plus years. It's just delivering on those 3 promises. That's really ultimately what your brand stands for.
when you have a strong brand can command higher fees?
It does. That's what gives you pricing power.
Wow. Verne, I love reading, and unfortunately for some people, reading is a lost art today. Can you explain to the audience what books does Verne like to read, and what books do you recommend for the listeners to read?
Well, I reference over 40 just in Scaling Up, and there's actually a list that you can reference right on scalingup.com. So I would start with that 40, and then you guys can go, readers can go back and search. One of the things I do at Fortune is I get to choose the top 5 business books each year, and you can see that for 2017 and 16 and 15 and 14 and 13 and 12, and that'll keep you busy. But also, I took a page from Peter Drucker, the late Peter Drucker, and he half the books he read were fiction books, good fiction, and he read them because that really gives you insight into humans and relationships and feelings and emotions. And the best marketing obviously appeals to emotion. Scott Galloway's work, he's got a brand new book out called The Four. And it's off his famous, speech that he gave about the 4 horsemen, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Amazon, and who he predicted would win based on who really created the most emotional connection with the customer. And we obviously have the most emotional connection to Apple. And that's why they're the largest market cap. Most of us don't have really emotional connection with Google. Next, we're really getting a very close emotional connection with Amazon. It's our number 1 search engine for products, which is the biggest threat to Google that existed. And then I'd say third, we got an emotional connection with Facebook because that's in Google's last. And by the way, that's about the order of their market caps. Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, Arthur, I've got to wrap up here. I've got to get to a luncheon.
All righty. Do you have any last pearls of wisdom for the listeners?
Yes. Read The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Here was this hippie who just decided to surrender to life and see what it brought him. And he ended up building, not for the street, but he ended up building a multi-million-dollar construction company and a multi-billion-dollar software company. And his story, I think, is a must-read for all entrepreneurs, called The Surrender Experiment. Then, after that, read his first book called The Untethered Soul. Because, man, the depression is high among entrepreneurs. We have one of the highest percentages, 30%. And I would say all entrepreneurs suffer depression at some point. And your ability to be able to handle that is really critical. And so Michael Singer and his work will be the most help.
I'd like to thank you, Verne Harnish, once again for taking time out of your busy schedule to educate me and the listeners worldwide about building wealth and about your phenomenal book, Scaling Up. I gladly appreciate it. You are a gift from God.
Arthur, thank you so much, and thank you for doing the heavy lifting of spreading these ideas. They're not real useful if no one hears them.
To everyone that's listening, I highly recommend get involved with the phenomenal Verne Harnish. You had the passion that came through his voice on my show today. He broke down layman's terms about billionaires are disciplined. He also broke down layman's terms about, as an entrepreneur or business leader, you need to spend time with your customers. He also broke down layman's terms about product, price, place, and promotion. And that is extremely important if you want to scale to the next level. I highly recommend get involved with the phenomenal Verne Harnish. Go to his website, scalingup.com. That's scaling, SCALING, up, UP.com. And Verne Harnish has incredible content that can take your mindset and your business to a whole nother level. But remember, you have to implement what you learn. So to everyone that's listening, Remember that the strongest asset that each and every one of you have is your brain and what you think about and what you take action on that will become your reality, and your mentality creates your reality. May God bless each and every one of you, and bye for now. Thank you, Verne.
Thank you, Arthur.
Have a pleasant day, everyone. Here's another bonus tip. I hope this exclusive, powerful interview help you fully understand on how you can scale your business or businesses to the next level. My great friend, successful businessman, international keynote speaker, educator, his name is Verne Harnish. Verne Harnish is the founder of his phenomenal company, which is called Gazelles. And Gazelles is a global education coaching company that has 210 partners on 6 continents. Also, Verne is a private investor, and he is the founder of Entrepreneurs Organization. And Entrepreneurs Organization has 12,000 members worldwide. In this interview, Verne, he breaks down layman's terms about marketing is having the right product. Also, in this interview, Verne Harnish, he breaks down layman's terms about when you have and create your phenomenal product, you have to know how to promote that product. Also, in this interview, Verne Harnish, he breaks down layman's terms about Steve Jobs cared about the right packaging for his phenomenal brand, which is called Apple. Also, in this interview, Verne Harnish, he breaks down layman's terms about 80% of life is about showing up. Also, in this interview, Verne Harnish, he breaks down layman's terms about money is like water. You have to keep it flowing, and much, much more. Also, Verne Harnish is the best-selling author of 3 phenomenal books. His first book is called Scaling Up, and his second book is called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. If you want to learn more about business, marketing, advertising, copyright, investing in gold and silver, investing in real estate, or how to scale your businesses to the next level, or how to build wealth, or how to live a healthier life, you can contact me directly at 215-490-2516. That's area code 215-490-2516. Or you can email me at arthur@powerfulinterviews.com. That's Arthur, ARTHUR, at powerfulinterviews, POWERINTERVIEWS.com. And I highly recommend listen to this exclusive interview over and over and over again so it can reinforce your learning. Once again, my name is Arthur Robinson Jr. I am the founder and host of PowerfulInterviews.com, and I'm a partner of NationalDiversified.com, and that is our private equity company. Thank you, and thanks for listening.